How did something as simple as flour, eggs, and milk poured onto a hot griddle become such a deeply American ritual? When did Sunday mornings start smelling like butter and maple syrup in millions of homes across the country? And why do we feel like something's missing when we skip this particular weekend tradition? Well, the earliest American colonists probably wouldn't recognize our fluffy Sunday stacks at all. What they knew were dense, hearty cakes cooked over open fires, often more like thick crepes than the pillowy clouds we pour syrup over today. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. As you settle in for this journey through breakfast history, you're going to discover how a simple morning meal became woven into the fabric of American weekends. You'll find out why your grandmother's pancake recipe might have more history than you realize, and how centuries of cultural mixing, religious traditions, and clever marketing created the Sunday morning ritual we know today. Along the way, your breathing might slow down a bit, your thoughts might soften around the edges, and you might find yourself drifting into that peaceful place between waking and sleeping, where stories taste like maple syrup and sound like sizzling butter. If this kind of gentle exploration helps you unwind, I'd love it if you subscribe to hear more bedtime histories. No pressure though, just a thought for when you're ready. And hey, while you're getting comfortable, why not share in the comments what your favorite pancake topping is? I'm genuinely curious if anyone out there is still team butter only, or if everyone's converted to the maple syrup majority. Before we begin tonight's story, take a moment to adjust your pillow just right. Maybe pull that blanket up a little higher and let your shoulders drop. Let the day's tensions melt away like butter on a warm griddle, and allow yourself to sink into this tale of America's most beloved breakfast tradition. You're standing in a colonial kitchen in 1620s Massachusetts, though kitchen might be too generous a word. It's really just one side of a single-room house, dominated by a massive stone fireplace that serves as heat source, light source, and cooking station all at once. The Dutch family next door, they're making something that smells familiar yet foreign. The woman of the house is working with a batter, but it's nothing like what modern Americans would recognize. She's making Pancake, Dutch pancakes that are thin, almost crepe-like, spread wide in a heavy iron pan that her family carried across an ocean. The batter is basic, just flour from wheat they struggled to grow in this unfamiliar soil, eggs from chickens that barely survived the voyage, and milk from a cow that seems perpetually unimpressed with New England weather. Meanwhile, 3 houses down, an English family is preparing their own version. They call them pancakes too, but theirs are smaller, thicker, more like what the British still call drop scones. The key difference? They're using a bit of ale in the batter, the yeast giving them a subtle tang and a slightly different texture. It's an old trick from home, where ale was safer to drink than water. But here's where things get interesting, and where historians start disagreeing about the details. The local Wampanoag people, they've been making their own flat cakes for generations. They call them no-cake or Johnny cakes, made from cornmeal ground between stones, mixed with water, and cooked on hot rocks or clay griddles. Some historical accounts suggest, though evidence remains frustratingly incomplete, that these indigenous cakes were one of the first foods shared with starving colonists. You can imagine the cultural collision happening in real time. European wheat traditions meeting American corn. Old world techniques encountering new world ingredients. It wasn't a fusion cuisine by design, more like a desperate improvisation born of survival. According to food historian Alice Ross, though other scholars debate her timeline, these various flatbread traditions began merging almost immediately. The Dutch started adding cornmeal to their pannenkoeken when wheat was scarce. The English discovered that indigenous methods of grinding corn produced a finer meal than their millstones could achieve. And everyone, regardless of origin, learned that maple syrup made everything taste better, though that particular revelation would take a few more decades to fully develop. The thing is, and I find this oddly comforting, nobody was trying to create an American tradition. They were just trying to make breakfast, with whatever they had, in whatever way they knew how. The Dutch mother wasn't thinking about cultural legacy when she substituted cornmeal for wheat flour. She was thinking about hungry children and an empty flour barrel. Different immigrant groups brought their own variations. The Germans arrived with their Pancake, which were somewhere between Dutch and English versions in thickness. The Scots brought their own oatcake traditions that would eventually influence pancake recipes in Appalachia. The French in Louisiana would later contribute their own crepe-like variations, creating what would become a distinct regional style. But evidence suggests, and here's where historians love to argue, that something unique was already emerging by the 1650s. Travel accounts from the period, though they must be read with appropriate skepticism, describe colonists eating Indian cakes that were neither fully European nor fully indigenous. They were something new, something that could only have emerged from this particular collision of cultures. You watch as a colonial housewife in 1654. Let's place her in New Amsterdam before it becomes New York, experiments with her morning cakes. She's discovered that cornmeal makes them heartier, but also grittier. So she's trying something new, mixing wheat and corn flour together, adding an extra egg for richness. She doesn't realize it, but she's participating in the invention of American cuisine. The earliest colonial recipes that survive, and we're lucky to have any at all considering how few people were literate, show this evolution in progress. A handwritten recipe from 1683, found in the papers of a Massachusetts family, calls for Indian meal and English flour in equal parts. It's literally a recipe for cultural fusion, measured out in careful proportions. Some scholars argue, particularly those studying Dutch colonial influence, that the Dutch had an outsized impact on American pancake culture. Their pannenkoeken were often served for dinner, not breakfast, and were sometimes filled with bacon or apples. Sound familiar? It should. Those are still popular pancake additions today, though we've moved them firmly to the morning meal. The English influence shows up in different ways. Their tradition of Shrove Tuesday pancakes, the last indulgence before Lenten fasting, would eventually influence American church pancake suppers, though that development was still centuries away. For now, in these early colonial days, pancakes were just sustenance, not ceremony. But here's what really intrigues historians, and honestly, keeps me up at night thinking about it. By the 1680s, colonial pancakes were already distinctly different from anything being made in Europe. Travelers returning to England complained, or sometimes praised, these American cakes that were neither properly English nor recognizably Dutch. They were sweeter, often larger, and increasingly likely to be served with that mysterious tree syrup the colonists had learned about from indigenous peoples. The archaeological record, limited as it is, supports this cultural blending. Cooking implements found that colonial sites show modifications. Dutch pans altered to cook thicker cakes. English griddles adapted for cornmeal batters. Indigenous cooking stones repurposed for European-style breads. It's like watching evolution happen in cast iron and stone. You're watching now as a family in 1690s Pennsylvania. Quakers who pride themselves on plain living sit down to a breakfast of simple cakes. They wouldn't call them pancakes yet. That term wouldn't become standard for decades. They might say griddle cakes, journey cakes, or hoe cakes, depending on how they were cooked. The names were as varied as the recipes, and both were still evolving. Regional differences were already emerging, and they tell us something important about how traditions develop. In New England, where wheat grew poorly and corn thrived, pancakes were increasingly corn-based. In the middle colonies, where wheat agriculture was more successful, they remained more European in composition. In the South, rice would eventually enter some recipes, adding yet another layer to this evolving tradition. But nobody, and I want to emphasize this, nobody was thinking we're creating America's future Sunday breakfast tradition. They were just trying to feed their families, efficiently, affordably, and when possible, enjoyably. The transformation of these simple griddle cakes into something symbolic, something that would eventually define American weekend mornings, that was still generations away. What fascinates food anthropologists, according to recent scholarship, is how quickly these hybrid pancakes became normalized. By 1700, just 80 years after the Mayflower, colonial pancakes were already considered standard fare. Children born in the colonies grew up thinking this fusion food was simply how pancakes were supposed to be. They had no memory of pure Dutch pannenkoeken or authentic English pancakes. They only knew this new world creation. The recipes passed down through families, most of them oral traditions since literacy remained limited, carried these innovations forward. Each generation added their own touches, a little more sugar as it became available, different proportions as milling techniques improved, new ingredients as trade expanded. The pancake was evolving, generation by generation, kitchen by kitchen. And perhaps most importantly for our story, these emerging American pancakes were democratic food. Unlike elaborate European pastries that required special skills and expensive ingredients, pancakes could be made by anyone with access to basic supplies. Rich or poor, educated or illiterate, recent immigrant or third-generation colonist, everyone could make some version of these simple cakes. This accessibility would become crucial, though nobody knew it yet, to their eventual role in American culture. A food that everyone could make would eventually become a food that everyone could share. But that transformation, from simple sustenance to Sunday tradition, was still waiting in America's future. The Sabbath arrives in your colonial town with the force of law, not suggestion. It's 1670s Boston, and Saturday night has a particular way to it. At sundown, which the church wardens determine with frustrating imprecision, all work must cease. No cooking, no cleaning, no unnecessary labor of any kind. The Puritan Sabbath runs from Saturday evening to Sunday evening, and violating it could mean time in the stocks. You watch as households scramble to prepare. The last hours of Saturday afternoon are frenzied, bread baked for tomorrow, stews prepared to eat cold, and increasingly, according to scattered diary entries that historians still debate, pancake batters mixed and set aside. The evidence for this Saturday night pancake preparation is tantalizingly incomplete. A mention here in a household account book, a recipe there noting best if rested overnight, but nothing definitive enough to satisfy academic scrutiny. Here's what makes pancakes different from other colonial foods, and why they became so perfectly suited to Sabbath restrictions. Unlike bread that needs kneading and long rising, unlike porridge that requires constant stirring, pancakes could be prepared in two distinct stages. Mix on Saturday when work was allowed. Cook quickly on Sunday when time was precious. The chemistry of resting batter, though colonists didn't understand it scientifically, actually improved the final product. The Dutch Reformed communities had slightly different rules. Their Sabbath observations allowed for minimal cooking, primarily warming foods, but nothing requiring extensive preparation. A Dutch housewife in New Netherlands, based on what we can piece together from church records, could cook her pannenkoeken on Sunday morning as long as she'd done the mixing Saturday night. This two-stage process fit perfectly within their theological boundaries. Evidence from the period suggests, though scholars continue to argue the specifics, that pancakes were becoming the pragmatic choice for Sabbath breakfast across denominations. The Massachusetts Bay Colony's law books from 1675 forbid unnecessary cooking on the Sabbath, but define necessary cooking as warming of prepared foods. Some legal historians interpret this, perhaps generously, as allowing for the cooking of pre-made batters on hot griddles. After all, wasn't that just another form of warming? You're in a Quaker household now. 1682 Pennsylvania, where the approach to Sunday is markedly different. The Society of Friends rejected elaborate Sabbath rules, but embraced simplicity in all things. Their first day breakfast of plain griddle cakes, quick to make, humble in ingredients, embodied their values perfectly. William Penn himself, according to household records that may or may not be reliable, was said to enjoy wheat cakes with honey on first-day mornings. The Anglican communities of Virginia brought English country customs, including substantial Sunday meals after church services. But here's the challenge. Morning services could last 3 hours or more. Families needed something quick before church, something that wouldn't leave them fumbling with complicated cooking while trying to dress in their Sunday best. Pancakes, mixed the night before, cooked in minutes, solved this problem elegantly. Colonial court records, and these are genuinely fascinating if you enjoy 17th century legal proceedings, show numerous Sabbath violations. A man in Salem fined for gathering firewood. A woman in Hartford charged with cooking a full meal. But curiously, no records found so far mention anyone being prosecuted for cooking pancakes on Sunday morning. This absence might suggest that pancake making had found some kind of theological loophole, or perhaps that authorities considered it minimal enough to ignore. The German Reformed communities in Pennsylvania, according to church records from the 1690s, specifically mention Sonntagspfannkuchen, Sunday pancakes, as distinct from weekday versions. These were richer, often containing extra eggs and sugar, saved specifically for the Sabbath. Here we see pancakes beginning to transcend mere convenience, becoming a marker of Sunday specialness. You can picture a scene repeated across the colonies. Saturday evening, as shadows lengthen, mothers and daughters mixing tomorrow's batter. Flour, precious and often scarce, measured carefully. Eggs when available, milk or water when not. Perhaps a bit of sugar if the family was prosperous, or honey if they kept bees. The wooden bowl covered with cloth, set in the coolest corner of the kitchen, waiting for dawn. Mary Rowlandson's captivity narrative from 1682 mentions missing Sabbath day refreshments, and while she doesn't specify what those were, other contemporary accounts suggest that pancakes were increasingly common. Sarah Kemble Knight's 1704 travel journal describes Sunday breakfasts at various inns, noting that griddle cakes were nearly universal, though recipes and quality varied wildly. The theological debates of the era occasionally touch on pancake preparation specifically. One Massachusetts minister in 1688 preached that cooking pancakes on Sunday was acceptable as long as the labor of preparation happened the day before. Another minister, from the same year but in Pennsylvania, went further, arguing that quick-cooked foods like pancakes actually honored the Sabbath by minimizing work. What's particularly interesting, and this is where food history gets detective-like, is how pancake recipes from this period begin showing adaptations for overnight resting. Recipes start specifying mix before retiring Saturday evening, or best if stood overnight. The pancake was evolving to fit colonial religious life, becoming not just food, but a solution to a theological puzzle. The Scots-Irish arriving in the 1690s brought Presbyterian Sabbath traditions and their own quick-cooking oat cakes. These merged with existing pancake traditions, adding oats to some regional recipes. But more importantly, they brought a tradition of communal Sabbath breakfast, families gathering before kirk services to share simple foods. Some historians see this as contributing to pancakes becoming social food, not just family sustenance. By 1700, patterns were crystallizing that would define American Sunday breakfast. The pancake had evolved from various European and indigenous traditions into something uniquely suited to colonial Sabbath requirements. Quick enough to cook between waking and church, simple enough to avoid theological controversy, special enough to mark Sunday as different from ordinary days. Church records from the early 1700s begin showing something crucial. References to griddle cakes served at informal gatherings before services. Not yet the organized church suppers that would come later, but families sharing breakfast, comparing recipes, building community around this simple food. The pancake was becoming not just Sabbath sustenance, but Sabbath social ritual. The role of women in establishing this tradition deserves emphasis, though frustratingly, their voices rarely appear in historical records. They were the ones solving the practical puzzle of Sabbath restrictions, discovering that pancake batter, unlike bread dough, actually improved overnight, that griddle cakes could be cooked while children dressed for church, that this simple food could become special through small additions, a handful of berries, a drizzle of honey, a pinch of precious spice. Regional variations were already emerging. New England's cornmeal pancakes reflecting local agriculture. Middle colony wheat cakes showing Dutch and German influence. Southern rice flour variations beginning to appear. But across all regions, the Sunday pancake pattern was taking hold. Saturday night preparation. Sunday morning cooking. A practical solution becoming cultural tradition. What emerges from careful examination of the evidence, with all appropriate historical caution, is that pancakes weren't chosen as Sunday food through any grand decision. Rather, they evolved to fit the unique requirements of colonial Sabbath observance. They were the right food for the right restrictions at the right time. The theological framework that made Sunday special was firmly established by 1700. The practical advantages of pancakes for Sabbath breakfast were being discovered in kitchens across the colonies. Women were passing these discoveries to their daughters, mixing Saturday night batters that would rest while the family rested, rise slightly from natural fermentation while the sun rose. In countless colonial kitchens, the same scene played out week after week. Saturday evening, the batter mixed and covered. Sunday morning, the griddle heated while the family dressed. The sizzle of batter hitting hot iron becoming the sound of Sabbath morning. The smell of cooking pancakes mixing with the church bells calling faithful to worship. The pancake had found its day. Sunday had found its breakfast. Though neither colonists nor their pancakes knew it yet, a tradition was being born that would outlast the colonies themselves, survive revolution and civil war, and eventually become as American as, well, as Sunday morning pancakes. You're trudging through knee-deep snow in a Vermont forest. It's March 1710, and you're following an Abenaki guide who's about to show you something that will transform American breakfast forever. The trees here, sugar maples mostly, are just beginning to wake from winter's sleep. Your guide makes a diagonal cut in the bark, and clear sap begins to drip, slowly, mesmerizingly, into a birch bark container. The indigenous peoples of the Northeast had been harvesting maple sap for generations before Europeans arrived, though exactly how long remains a matter of scholarly debate. Archaeological evidence suggests, though dating is imprecise, that maple sugaring goes back at least 1,000 years. The Haudenosaunee have oral traditions about maple syrup discovery. The Anishinaabe tell of how Nanabozo taught them to tap trees, but pinpointing when these practices began proves impossible. What we do know from French missionary records, particularly the Relations de Suites from the 1630s, is that indigenous peoples were already masters of maple sugaring when Europeans first witnessed it. They had developed sophisticated techniques, cutting bark at specific angles, knowing exactly when sap would run best, using hot stones to boil sap in birch bark containers that somehow didn't burn. It was technology perfectly adapted to its environment. The colonists' first attempts at maple sugaring were, well, let's just say they had a learning curve. You're watching a Massachusetts farmer in 1705. Trying to replicate what he's seen indigenous peoples do. He's got iron pots, which should make it easier, but he doesn't understand the subtleties. He taps trees too early or too late, boils the sap too fast and scorches it, or doesn't boil it enough and it spoils. According to agricultural records from the period, it took most colonial families several seasons to produce edible maple syrup. The ratio still astounds people today: 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. Indigenous peoples knew this, had developed patience and techniques over centuries. Colonists had to learn it the hard way, pot after pot of scorched or watery failure. But here's what changed everything for pancakes specifically, and this is where the historical record gets deliciously specific. Before maple syrup became widespread, colonists topped their pancakes with various alternatives. Molasses imported from the West Indies, expensive and often unavailable. Honey when they could get it, but bee colonies were still being established. Sometimes just butter, or preserved fruit, or nothing at all. A diary entry from 1712, found in the papers of a Connecticut family, describes the first time they tried maple syrup on pancakes. The writer calls it a revelation of sweetness that transforms the humble cake into something worthy of the Sabbath table. This might be the earliest written record of what would become an iconic pairing, though surely others had discovered it simultaneously. The economics of maple syrup were revolutionary in the most literal sense. Unlike molasses, which required trade with British-controlled Caribbean colonies, maple syrup could be produced locally. Some historians argue, though evidence is circumstantial, that maple syrup production was an early form of colonial self-sufficiency that would later influence revolutionary thinking. You could sweeten your pancakes without supporting British trade monopolies. Indigenous peoples had various uses for maple sugar and syrup, but there's little evidence they specifically paired it with pancakes or similar foods. The combination appears to be a colonial innovation, born from the collision of European pancake traditions and North American maple resources. Some food historians call this, perhaps grandly, one of the first truly American flavor combinations. You're in a frontier cabin now, 1720s Western Massachusetts, where maple syrup has become currency as much as condiment. Families trade syrup for flour, flour for eggs, eggs for milk, creating an economy where pancakes with maple syrup represent not just breakfast, but a web of community exchanges. The account books from frontier towns, when they survive, show maple syrup as a common unit of trade. The technique of sugaring spread differently across regions, and this is where historians love to argue about causation versus correlation. In areas with good relationships between colonists and indigenous peoples, maple sugaring developed quickly. In areas of conflict, colonists struggled to learn the techniques on their own. Vermont and New Hampshire, with their vast maple forests and relatively peaceful relations, became early centers of production. By the 1730s, recipes began appearing that specifically call for maple syrup as a pancake accompaniment. A handwritten cookbook from Philadelphia, dated 1734, includes instructions for griddle cakes served with tree syrup in the manner of the northern colonies. The pairing was spreading beyond maple country, though authentic syrup remained a luxury in southern regions. The frontier presented unique challenges and innovations. Families moving westward learned to identify maple trees in unfamiliar territory. Indigenous peoples sometimes taught them, sometimes didn't, depending on relations that could change season by season. A frontier family might go years without maple syrup, then find themselves in a grove of sugar maples and produce enough for years. There's something almost mythical about maple season that colonists quickly adopted. The sap runs for just a few weeks, when nights are below freezing but days are warm. Miss that window and you wait another year. This seasonality made maple syrup precious, not just expensive but time sensitive. Sunday pancakes with real maple syrup became a late winter, early spring celebration. The process of making maple syrup was often communal. Neighbors would gather for sugaring bees, similar to barn raisings or corn huskings. Multiple families would work together, tending fires, collecting sap, taking turns watching the boiling pots through the night. These gatherings, according to scattered accounts, often ended with pancake breakfasts sweetened with the first syrup of the season. You can picture these scenes, smoke rising from sugar shacks in the forest, families taking shifts through cold March nights, children sneaking tastes of thickening syrup. And then, as dawn breaks, someone mixing pancake batter. Everyone gathering around makeshift griddles, pouring still warm syrup over steaming cakes. It was celebration and sustenance combined. The quality of colonial maple syrup varied wildly, and contemporary accounts are sometimes amusing in their complaints. One British traveler in 1738 described it as burnt tree blood and wondered why colonists preferred it to proper English treacle. But colonists were developing distinctly American palates, learning to love the complex sweetness that paired so perfectly with cornmeal pancakes. By 1740, patterns were established that would persist for centuries. Late winter meant maple season. Maple season meant syrup making. Syrup making meant community gathering. And community gathering meant pancakes for breakfast. The cycle repeated annually, embedding itself in the rhythm of colonial life. Regional variations developed based on local maple species and techniques. Vermont syrup was known for its light color and delicate flavor. New York's for its robust darkness. Pennsylvania's for its hints of butterscotch. These weren't official classifications, just reputation and pride, but they mattered to the families who produced them. The combination of pancakes and maple syrup was becoming more than just a pairing of convenience. It was becoming symbolic. The pancake represented European tradition adapted to American grain. The maple syrup represented American bounty unknown in Europe. Together, they created something that existed nowhere else in the world. Frontier families developed incredible ingenuity around both pancakes and syrup. When maple trees weren't available, they learned to make syrup from birch or walnut trees, inferior but better than nothing. When wheat flour ran out, they made pancakes entirely from cornmeal or even ground nuts. The forms changed, but the essential combination, flat cake plus tree sweetness, persisted. The historical record shows maple syrup gradually transforming from frontier necessity to cultural preference. By 1750, wealthy colonial families who could afford imported sugar still chose maple syrup for their pancakes. It had become not just sweetener but tradition, not just flavor but identity. What started as indigenous knowledge shared with struggling colonists had evolved into something distinctly American. The maple syrup revolution wasn't just about sweetness. It was about independence, community, seasonality, and the gradual creation of American food culture. And at the center of this transformation, on Sunday morning tables across the colonies, sat stacks of pancakes, waiting for their perfect partner. You're standing in the basement of a Methodist church in Ohio. It's 1847, and the air is thick with smoke from 5 cast iron griddles working simultaneously. Women in their Sunday best have their sleeves rolled up. Men are carrying armloads of firewood. Children are setting tables with mismatched plates donated by half the congregation. This is one of America's first documented church pancake suppers, though certainly not the very first, as historians are quick to point out. The phenomenon of church pancake suppers seems to have emerged from multiple sources simultaneously, making it nearly impossible to identify a single origin point. Some scholars trace it to Shrove Tuesday traditions brought by English and Scottish immigrants. Others point to German church harvest festivals. Still others argue it developed independently as a practical fundraising solution. The truth, as is often the case, probably involves all three. Like those early colonial Sabbath pancakes from decades before, the church supper solved multiple problems at once. Churches needed money for repairs, expansions, and missions. Congregations needed social gatherings that didn't violate temperance pledges. Communities needed neutral spaces where different social classes could mix. The Pancake Supper addressed all these needs with remarkable efficiency. The earliest reliable record of a church pancake fundraiser comes from a Presbyterian church in Pennsylvania in 1843, though the practice was probably older. The church ledger records receipts from Griddle Cake Supper, $12.37, enough to repair the church roof. But more interesting than the money, the ledger notes that near every family in town attended, regardless of denomination. Railroad expansion in the 1840s and 1850s transformed these local church suppers into something larger. The railroad brought standardized time schedules, which meant communities suddenly synchronized their activities. It brought traveling salesmen and workers who needed feeding. It brought news of what other towns were doing, including their successful pancake suppers. You're watching now as a railroad town in Illinois, 1851, prepares for its monthly pancake supper. The train arrives at 6 p.m. sharp, disgorging hungry travelers who've heard about the Methodist Church's reputation for light, fluffy pancakes. Local farmers bring eggs and milk. The general store donates flour. The church women have been making butter since dawn. It's community cooperation that would make those early colonists proud. Evidence suggests, though documentation is frustratingly scattered, that pancake suppers spread along railroad routes like a delicious epidemic. A successful supper in one town would inspire imitation in the next. Churches began competing, not officially of course, for who could serve the most pancakes, raise the most money, draw the biggest crowd. The Civil War transformed church pancake suppers from local fundraisers into patriotic events. Both Union and Confederate churches held pancake suppers to support war efforts, though they called them different things. Flapjack rallies in the North, griddle cake gatherings in the South. The recipes might differ, cornmeal prominent in the South, wheat flour in the North, but the concept was identical. A letter from a Union soldier in 1863 describes returning home on leave to find his church holding a pancake supper to raise money for medical supplies. He writes, "The familiar taste of those cakes, sweetened with maple syrup from Thompson's sugar bush, reminded me why we fight, for home, community, and Sunday mornings when the war is done." After the war, church pancake suppers became part of American reunification, though nobody called it that officially. Northern churches raising money to rebuild Southern churches. Southern congregations hosting suppers to support Northern war widows. The pancake became politically neutral ground. Everybody ate them, everybody needed them, everybody could contribute something to their making. The industrialization of the 1870s and 1880s changed church suppers again. Cast iron griddles became affordable and standardized. Baking powder made pancakes fluffier and more reliable. Railroad distribution meant consistent flour supplies. The pancake supper evolved from improvised community gathering to organized institutional event. You're in a Catholic church in Boston, 1878, where Irish immigrants have adapted the pancake supper to their own traditions. They're serving potato pancakes alongside traditional wheat ones, acknowledging their heritage while embracing American customs. The Protestant churches down the street are suspicious, but when they taste those potato pancakes at the Community Harvest Festival, well, traditions have a way of spreading. Church meeting minutes from the period, and these are wonderfully detailed when they survive, show pancake suppers becoming increasingly elaborate. First Methodist Church of Akron, 1882, resolved to purchase dedicated pancake griddles, syrup pitchers, and serving plates for monthly suppers. These weren't just fundraisers anymore, they were institutions. The temperance movement of the 1880s and 1890s gave church pancake suppers additional importance. As saloons were closed or restricted, churches needed to provide alternative social spaces. The pancake supper was perfect, wholesome, family-friendly, and impossible to make alcoholic, though some creative souls certainly tried. Women's church auxiliaries typically organize these events, and their unpublished labor deserves recognition. They developed systems: prep crews, cooking crews, serving crews, cleanup crews. They maintained recipe books that became closely guarded secrets. They knew exactly how many pancakes could be made from a barrel of flour, how much syrup a congregation would consume, how many eggs to request from local farmers. A fascinating document from 1885, a pancake supper planning guide from a Methodist church in Kansas, shows the level of organization achieved. It includes timing charts, ingredient calculations, griddle rotation schedules, even suggested sermon topics for the Sunday following a successful supper. This wasn't casual community gathering anymore. It was precision-engineered fellowship. The social dynamics of church pancake suppers reveal period tensions and transformations. Segregated churches in the South held separate suppers, but accounts suggest recipes and techniques crossed racial lines through domestic workers. Women gained leadership experience organizing suppers, skills they'd later apply to suffrage organizing. Immigrant churches used suppers to demonstrate their American assimilation while maintaining ethnic touches. You can imagine the scene repeated in thousands of churches across America. Saturday evening preparation, flour sifted, eggs counted, griddles seasoned. Sunday morning service with announcements about the upcoming supper. Monday evening doors opening to crowds of neighbors, strangers, travelers, all united by the simple promise of hot pancakes. The fundraising aspects were remarkable. A church in Minnesota reported raising enough from 3 pancake suppers in 1889 to build an entire edition. Another in Texas used pancake proceeds to fund missionary work in China. The humble pancake was financing American religious expansion, one stack at a time. Railroad companies began including church pancake suppers in their travel guides. Seriously. The 1891 Illinois Central Railroad Passenger Guide notes, travelers may find excellent and economical dining at church pancake suppers in the following towns. It then lists 17 churches with their supper schedules. The pancake supper had become tourist attraction. By 1890, the church pancake supper was as American as, well, as Sunday morning pancakes themselves. Every denomination had adapted the practice to their own traditions. Lutherans added lingonberries, Baptists emphasized corn cakes, Methodists prided themselves on quantity, Presbyterians on quality, though these were stereotypes more than rules. The recipes from these church suppers would influence American pancake culture for generations. Church cookbooks, published to raise additional funds, spread successful recipes nationwide. A pancake recipe from a small Episcopal church in Vermont might end up in a Lutheran kitchen in Nebraska, modified, adapted, but recognizably connected. What started as practical fundraising had become something more. The church pancake supper was democracy in action, community in practice, tradition in formation. It connected the Sunday morning family pancake with the broader community, making pancakes not just family food but fellowship food. These church suppers were creating memories that would be passed down through generations. The smell of pancakes forever linked with church basements, community singing, neighbors becoming friends. The pancake was writing itself into American social history, one church supper at a time. You're standing at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. It's 1893, and a woman named Nancy Green is flipping pancakes with theatrical flair while dressed as a plantation mammy. This deeply problematic performance, which modern historians rightfully critique as perpetuating harmful stereotypes, was demonstrating something that would revolutionize American breakfast. Pearl Milling Company's ready-made pancake mix, created 40 years earlier in St. Joseph, Missouri. The actual invention happened in 1889. Not at the World's Fair as many sources incorrectly claim. Chris Rutt and Charles Underwood, two entrepreneurs struggling to sell their excess flour, had developed the first ready-mixed, self-rising pancake flour. They'd named it Aunt Jemima after a minstrel song, a decision that would cast a troubling shadow over pancake history for more than a century. But let's focus on what this mix actually did, technically speaking. Before 1889, making pancakes meant measuring flour, adding leavening agents, salt, maybe some sugar, getting proportions right through trial and error. The new mix combined everything in scientifically measured proportions. Just add water or milk, stir, and pour. It was convenience in a box, though that box came with deeply problematic imagery that wouldn't be fully addressed until 2020. The chemistry behind the mix was genuinely innovative. Rutt and Underwood had figured out how to keep baking powder stable when pre-mixed with flour, something previous attempts had failed to achieve. They used a double-acting formula that released gas both when mixed with liquid and when heated, ensuring fluffy pancakes even for inexperienced cooks. Contemporary accounts from the 1893 World's Fair, where Nancy Green served an estimated 50,000 pancakes, describe crowds mesmerized not just by her performance, but by the consistency of the product. Every pancake was perfectly round, uniformly fluffy, predictably delicious. This was industrial standardization applied to home cooking, and people were fascinated. You're in a general store in Nebraska, 1895, where the first shipment of pancake mix has just arrived. The storekeeper is skeptical. Why would anyone pay for pre-mixed flour when they could mix their own? But farm wives, exhausted from daunted arc labor, see it differently. Those saved minutes on Sunday morning mean extra time for hairpinning, child wrangling, or just breathing before church. The initial resistance to pancake mix reveals interesting cultural tensions. Some newspaper editorials, particularly in New England, condemned it as lazy woman's cooking. Church magazines worried it would undermine traditional domestic skills. One Methodist publication in 1896 asked, "If our daughters cannot mix pancake batter, what else might they abandon?" But evidence from store ledgers and company records suggests, though exact numbers are disputed, that sales grew steadily despite criticism. Rural areas adopted it faster than cities, possibly because farm women had less time for elaborate cooking. Immigrant communities were slower to adopt, perhaps because pancake mix didn't accommodate their traditional variations. The success of Pearl Milling's mix inspired immediate competition. By 1895, at least 6 other companies were producing pancake mixes. Some added buckwheat, others cornmeal, each claiming superiority. The pancake mix wars had begun, though consumers seemed happy to try them all. Railroad dining cars were among the first commercial adopters of pancake mix. According to railway archives, the consistency and speed made it perfect for feeding travelers. A cook on the Northern Pacific Line could produce identical pancakes in a swaying kitchen at 60 miles per hour, something nearly impossible with scratch batter. You're watching a fascinating transformation in 1897. A church pancake supper in Iowa where the organizing committee, after much debate documented in meeting minutes, decides to use commercial mix instead of homemade batter. The time saved allows them to serve twice as many people, though some traditionalists grumble about store-bought pancakes lacking soul. The advertising for early pancake mixes provides a window into period attitudes, adds emphasized time saving for modern women, but also stressed that using mix allowed more time for proper family attention. The message was contradictory. Be modern but remain traditional. Save time, but don't abandon domestic duties. Scientific advancement in milling and chemistry made these mixes possible. Steam-powered mills could produce flour of unprecedented fineness and consistency. Chemical companies were creating more stable leavening agents. Food science was emerging as a legitimate field. The pancake mix was part of a larger revolution in food processing. But here's what many histories miss. I think the pancake mix didn't immediately replace scratch pancakes. Instead, it created a two-tier system. Sunday pancakes for the family might still be made from scratch. Special occasions demanded real pancakes. But Tuesday morning before school, Wednesday when unexpected guests arrived, that's when the box came out. Sales records from 1898 show interesting seasonal patterns. Pancake mix sales peaked in September and January, back to school and post-holiday periods when routines were disrupted. They dipped in March, maple syrup season, when people apparently wanted authentic pancakes for their fresh syrup. The mix was finding its niche as convenience food rather than replacement. The Spanish-American War of 1898 gave pancake mix an unexpected boost. Military procurement officers ordered thousands of pounds for army camps. It shipped well, stored well, and soldiers could prepare it with minimal equipment. Letters home mentioned flapjacks from a box that taste nearly like mother's, high praise from homesick soldiers. Women's reactions to pancake mix were complex and often contradictory, based on diaries and letters from the period. Some embraced it as liberation from kitchen drudgery. Others felt guilty about the convenience. Still others used it secretly, transferring mix to unmarked containers to hide their shameful shortcut. The agricultural implications were significant. Farmers who grew wheat suddenly had a new market, value-added products that sold for more than raw grain. Some farming communities that had resisted church pancake suppers, seeing them as competition for egg and milk sales, now embraced them as wheat promotion opportunities. You can picture the gradual normalization. A mother in 1899 rushing to prepare Sunday breakfast. She reaches for the familiar box, no longer feeling guilty. Her children don't know these aren't real pancakes. They just know Sunday morning tastes like maple syrup and family time. The convenience product has become tradition. By 1900, just 11 years after its invention, commercial pancake mix was stocked in most American general stores. The Sears Roebuck catalog offered it mail order, bringing convenience to even the most remote farmsteads. What started as two men trying to sell excess flour had become a nationwide industry. The implications went beyond breakfast. The success of pancake mix proved that Americans would embrace convenience foods if they could maintain the appearance of home cooking. It paved the way for cake mixes, biscuit mixes, and eventually the entire processed food industry. The pancake mix was gateway drug to convenience culture. But the most profound change was temporal. Pancake mix didn't eliminate Sunday pancake traditions, it expanded them. Now pancakes could happen any morning, any time with minimal planning. The special became possible to make ordinary, though paradoxically, this seemed to make Sunday pancakes even more special by contrast. The 20th century was dawning, and with it would come electric griddles, chain restaurants, and further innovations. But the foundation was set. The pancake had been industrialized, standardized, democratized. Nancy Greene's problematic performance at the World's Fair had introduced something that would reshape American breakfast, even as we grapple with its troubled origins. The ready-made mix had made pancakes simultaneously easier and more complex, more accessible yet somehow less authentic. It was progress wrapped in nostalgia, efficiency dressed as tradition. And Americans, ever practical, embraced both the convenience and the contradiction. You're pushing through the heavy glass doors of a gleaming new automat in Philadelphia. It's 1902. And the entire restaurant is a wall of tiny windowed compartments, each holding a different dish. You drop a nickel into a slot, turn a knob, and a door pops open, revealing a stack of steaming pancakes. No waiter, no wait, no human interaction required. This is the future of American dining, or so everyone believes. The horn and hard art automat was revolutionizing how urban Americans thought about eating out. Behind those little glass windows, invisible to customers, women were cooking pancakes on massive electric griddles, a technology that had only become commercially viable in the late 1890s. These griddles could maintain exact temperatures, cook dozens of pancakes simultaneously, produce consistent results hour after hour. But across town, in smaller establishments called lunch wagons that would eventually evolve into diners, a different pancake revolution was happening. These mobile eateries, often converted railway cars or custom-built wagons, could park outside factories and serve workers round the clock. By 1905, according to trade publications from the period, an estimated 2,000 lunch wagons were operating nationwide, and pancakes were on every menu. The electric griddle deserves its own moment of recognition, really. Before electricity, making pancakes required managing wood or coal fires, constantly adjusting heat, dealing with hot spots and cold zones. The electric griddle, particularly the commercial models introduced by companies like Westinghouse and General Electric around 1900, offered thermostatic control, exact temperatures every time. You're watching a diner cook in Newark, 1908, working a griddle the size of a desk. He's got 15 orders going simultaneously, each at a different stage of completion. The electric griddle lets him manage this chaos, zones of different temperatures for starting, finishing, keeping warm. He's not just cooking, he's conducting a symphony in batter and heat. Middle-class homes were getting their own electric griddles by 1910, though adoption was slow due to cost and limited electrical infrastructure. A 1911 Sears catalog advertised a breakfast table electric griddle for $12.50, roughly $400 in today's money, but for those who could afford it. Sunday morning pancakes no longer meant standing over a hot stove. Contemporary accounts describe the social impact of diners and automats on pancake consumption. For the first time, pancakes were available 24 hours a day, professionally made, consistently good. A traveling salesman's diary from 1909 mentions eating pancakes for dinner at a Cleveland diner, something that would have seemed bizarre just a decade earlier. The democratization happening here was profound, though not without its limitations. Diners served anyone who could pay, breaking down some class barriers. A banker and a factory worker might sit at the same counter eating identical pancakes. But racial segregation meant that this democracy was whites only in much of the country, a painful irony that historians are still unpacking. Urban immigrants found diners particularly appealing. According to immigration historians, these spaces offered American food without American judgment. You could point at a menu item, pay your nickel, eat your pancakes without speaking English or understanding American customs. The pancake became part of the assimilation process, a literally digestible piece of Americana. You're in a Greek-owned diner in Chicago, 1912, where something interesting is happening. The owner has added his own touch to the standard pancake recipe, a hint of lemon, a whisper of vanilla. Greek immigrants dominated the diner industry in many cities, and they were quietly transforming American pancakes, making them lighter, more complex, though customers rarely realized their pancakes had a Mediterranean influence. The rise of the Sunday drive, made possible by increasingly affordable automobiles, created new pancake opportunities. Roadside diners position themselves as destinations, not just refueling stops. Drive out for pancakes became a middle-class Sunday tradition, combining modern technology with traditional comfort food. Electric griddles in homes were creating their own revolution. A 1913 women's magazine article titled "Pancakes at the Table" described the novel practice of cooking pancakes in the dining room while family members watched. The electric griddle made this possible. No smoke, controlled heat, civilized cooking. Some families made it a Sunday morning performance. Father as pancake chef, children as appreciative audience. Department stores began demonstrating electric griddles, and these demonstrations were events. A newspaper account from Detroit in 1914 describes hundreds of women watching a demonstration at Hudson's department store. The demonstrator made perfect pancakes while wearing white gloves, proving how clean and easy electric cooking could be. The standardization of pancakes in commercial settings had unexpected effects on home cooking. Diaries and letters from the period suggest that some home cooks felt pressure to match restaurant quality. Church cookbooks began including tips for achieving diner-style pancakes, acknowledging that commercial versions had become the standard against which home cooking was measured. You're witnessing a cultural shift in 1915. Sunday isn't just for church and home anymore. Families are driving to diners after services, making pancake breakfast social events beyond church suppers. The local diner becomes community gathering space, conversations flowing between booths, pancakes as social lubricant. The technology kept advancing. By 1916, some urban diners had automatic pancake machines, devices that dispensed batter, flipped pancakes, and delivered them to plates with minimal human intervention. These machines were novelties more than practical solutions, but they represented American faith in technological progress. If we could automate pancakes, what couldn't we automate? Working women, whose numbers were increasing especially in urban areas, found diners liberating. A stenographer in New York could grab pancakes before work. No cooking, no cleanup, no judgment for eating alone in public. The pancake breakfast was being untethered from domestic space, becoming possible anywhere, anytime. Restaurant supply catalogs from the period show the industrialization of pancake production. Special batter mixers, portion control ladles, stackable warming plates. The simple pancake was generating an entire equipment industry. A restaurant could buy everything needed for pancake service from specialized suppliers, standardization through commerce. The cultural tension between homemade and restaurant pancakes was real and documented. Some families insisted Sunday pancakes must be homemade. Others embraced the convenience and novelty of eating out. Still others created hybrid traditions, pancakes at home one Sunday, at the diner the next. By 1918, as America entered World War I, diners and automats were so established that they became part of the war effort. Quick, cheap meals for factory workers building munitions. 24-hour service for round-the-clock production schedules. Pancakes fueling the arsenal of democracy, though that phrase wouldn't be coined for another war. The electric age had transformed pancakes from exclusively home-cooked meals to commercial products available anywhere, anytime. The diner made them democratic. The automat made them modern. The electric griddle made them consistent. Sunday morning pancakes were no longer confined to Sunday, or morning, or even home. But something interesting was happening. The more available pancakes became commercially, the more special Sunday morning pancakes at home seemed to become. The convenience of diners made the effort of home cooking feel more meaningful. The perfection of electric griddles made the quirks of family recipes more precious. Technology had democratized the pancake, but in doing so, it had also mythologized the traditional Sunday morning stack. The easier pancakes became to obtain, the more emotional weight they carried when made at home with family. You're standing in a bread line in Detroit. It's February 1932. And the Salvation Army is serving pancakes instead of soup. It's 20 degrees below zero, and the griddles are set up under a canvas tent, steam rising like prayers in the frozen air. A man ahead of you hasn't eaten in 2 days, but when he takes that first bite of hot pancake, something in his face shifts from despair to, not quite hope, but maybe its cousin. The Great Depression transformed pancakes from Sunday treat to survival food, though that transformation wasn't immediate or universal. In 1930, as unemployment began its terrible climb, church pancake suppers shifted from fundraising events to relief efforts. The same recipes, the same griddles, but now feeding the desperate instead of the charitable. Pancakes made economic sense in ways that become heartbreaking when you examine the numbers. A pound of flour cost 5 cents in 1932. Milk was 10 cents a quart when you could get it, or water when you couldn't. An egg, if you were lucky, 3 cents. From these humble ingredients, a mother could make enough pancakes to feed her family of 5, filling their stomachs if not their nutritional needs. The Roosevelt administration recognized the pancake's potential as relief food, though this part of New Deal history rarely makes textbooks. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration's 1933 cookbook, distributed to relief agencies nationwide, featured 7 different pancake recipes. Each used different combinations of available ingredients, accommodating shortages, substitutions, desperate improvisations. You're in a small Iowa town, 1934, where something remarkable is happening. The community has organized what they call a pancake chain. Every Sunday, families who still have means make extra batter. Their children deliver covered bowls to neighbors who are struggling. No names recorded, no shame acknowledged, just batter appearing on doorsteps like morning mist. Eleanor Roosevelt herself promoted pancakes as depression food. Her 1933 radio address mentioned them specifically. A hearty pancake breakfast costs pennies, but provides the energy our working men need. Whether she knew it or not, she was endorsing what millions of Americans were already doing, stretching flour into hope. Contemporary accounts, particularly oral histories collected by the WPA, reveal incredible pancake creativity born from necessity. Families made water pancakes with no milk or eggs. Depression cakes from leftover mashed potatoes. Hoover pancakes with whatever was available, though Hoover himself probably never knew his name was attached to such desperate innovation. The phenomenon of silver dollar Sundays emerged in multiple communities simultaneously, making it hard to trace origins. Churches would host pancake breakfasts where everything was priced at 5 cents, the size of a silver dollar pancake, the cost of attending, the amount donated if you could afford it. These events preserved dignity while providing relief. Everyone paid the same nickel whether they had nothing or plenty. You're watching a farm family in Oklahoma. 1935, as dust storms have destroyed their wheat crop. They're making pancakes from ground tumbleweed seeds, a Russian thistle that thrived where wheat died. The taste is bitter, the texture grainy, but mixed with precious flour and cooked on a hot griddle, they're edible. The children don't complain. They've learned not to. Social workers' reports from the period, archived in county courthouses across America, document the pancake's role in maintaining family stability. Sunday pancakes, even made from relief flour, preserved routine and ritual. Families might have lost everything else, but Sunday morning still meant pancakes, even if the syrup was just sugar water with vanilla extract. The Civilian Conservation Corps camps developed their own pancake culture. 3 million young men living in barracks, working on public projects, eating pancakes every Sunday morning. CCC Cookbook from 1936 specifies pancakes shall be served each Sunday breakfast as per President's directive regarding morale maintenance. These weren't just calories, they were engineered nostalgia. Here's something that deserves more recognition. The Depression created regional pancake variations that persist today. Southern families added cornmeal when wheat was scarce. Appalachian cooks used buckwheat and sorghum. Northern states experimented with potato flour. These weren't chosen for flavor, but necessity created tradition. You're in a Chicago relief kitchen. 1936, where volunteers have discovered something unexpected. Men who refuse soup will accept pancakes. The shape matters somehow. The act of cutting, stacking, eating with a fork instead of a spoon. Pancakes preserve dignity in ways that liquid charity cannot. A social worker's report notes, pancakes allow men to feel they're eating breakfast, not accepting handouts. The psychological importance of Sunday pancakes during the Depression fascinated contemporary observers, though their analyses were limited by period understanding. Psychiatrists working with relief agencies noted that families who maintained food rituals, particularly Sunday pancakes, showed better morale preservation. What they were really observing was the power of continuity in chaos. Rural communities developed pancake cooperatives, though they didn't use that formal term. Neighbors would pool ingredients, one family contributing flour, another eggs, another milk or syrup. Sunday mornings became communal cooking events, 6 families around one stove, children playing while adults managed scarcity with mathematical precision. The rise of pancake gardens in 1937 seems almost whimsical until you understand the desperation behind them. Enterprising families with big backyards would serve outdoor pancake breakfasts for 5 cents, or for barter, old clothes, firewood, anything tradable. These weren't restaurants. They were survival strategies disguised as social gatherings. You're reading a letter from 1938. A daughter writing to her mother about maintaining traditions. We still have pancakes every Sunday, Mama, though they're not like yours. I use water instead of milk and fewer eggs. But when I flip them, I think of you teaching me in the old kitchen, before everything changed. Government photographers documenting the Depression. Dorothea Lange, Walker Evans, others, occasionally captured pancake moments. A famous but rarely discussed photograph shows a migrant family cooking pancakes on a car engine block, using the heat from their broken-down vehicle to make Sunday breakfast. Desperate innovation, heartbreaking resourcefulness. The Federal Writers Project collected pancake recipes as part of their America Eats initiative, never published due to World War II. The archived manuscripts reveal hundreds of Depression-era pancake variations, each representing a family's specific negotiation with scarcity. Dust bowl cakes with minimal liquid, relief pancakes using government surplus flour, hope cakes named for what they represented. By 1939, as the economy began its slow recovery, sociologists noted something interesting. Families who could afford better food still made Depression-style pancakes. The recipes born from necessity had become preference. Children who grew up on water pancakes requested them even when milk was available. Scarcity had created its own cuisine. The communal aspects of Depression pancake culture left lasting marks. Church pancake suppers became permanent institutions rather than occasional fundraisers. The practice of sharing batter with neighbors persisted in some communities into the 1950s. The idea that pancakes were democratic food, accessible to all economic classes, was cemented during these hard years. What's remarkable, looking back, is how the pancake maintained its association with comfort and celebration even while serving as survival food. Sunday pancakes during the Depression weren't about abundance. They were about persistence. Not about luxury, but about maintaining humanity in dehumanizing circumstances. The Depression taught Americans that pancakes could be both less and more than food. Less in ingredients, nutrition, cost. More in meaning, community, resilience. This dual nature would influence how Americans thought about pancakes for generations. Simple food carrying complex weight. You're standing in a gleaming suburban kitchen in Levittown, New York. It's 1952. And everything is electric, automatic, gleaming with promise. The mother of the house is making pancakes with the squick, a product that's been around since 1931, but has suddenly become the symbol of modern efficiency. She's wearing a pressed dress at 7 in the morning, pearls at the breakfast table. This is the American dream served with syrup. The squick's origin story, well documented but worth revisiting, began on a train in 1930 when General Mills executive Carl Smith ate remarkably fresh biscuits in the dining car. The chef revealed he'd pre-mixed lard into flour with baking powder and salt, keeping it refrigerated. Smith realized that new hydrogenated oils could remain stable without refrigeration. Within a year, Bisquick was born. But it wasn't until the post-war suburban boom that Bisquick truly conquered American kitchens. By 1950, according to General Mills records, 40% of American households kept Bisquick in their pantries. The box promised 90-second pancakes, though that didn't include cooking time, a detail advertisements conveniently ignored. Still, compared to mixing from scratch, it felt like magic. Television was transforming how Americans thought about breakfast, and pancakes were perfectly telegenic. The Arthur Godfrey Show featured Bisquick demonstrations. Betty Crocker's television debut in 1951 included pancake-making segments. Local morning shows across America featured smiling homemakers flipping perfect circles while discussing community events. You're watching a new phenomenon, the suburban Saturday morning pancake ritual. Dad takes over the kitchen, his one weekly cooking performance. He's wearing an apron that says chef, wielding a spatula like a scepter. The children watch from the breakfast nook, an architectural feature that didn't exist 20 years ago, but now seems essential. This is Pancake's as family theater. The mythology being constructed here was powerful and deliberate. Magazine advertisements from 1953 show identical scenes, sunny kitchens, happy families, stacks of geometrically perfect pancakes. The message was clear. This is what normal looks like. This is what success tastes like. Never mind that many of these suburban families were one missed paycheck from disaster. The pancakes said prosperity. Sociologists studying Levittown and similar developments noted, though their observations were colored by period biases, that Sunday pancake breakfasts served important social functions. They were performance of stability for neighbors, demonstration of domestic competence for wives, proof of family harmony for everyone watching. The pressure to maintain these performances was considerable. The electric griddle had evolved from commercial luxury to suburban necessity. A 1954 Westinghouse model featured thermostatic control, non-stick coating, and chrome styling that matched kitchen appliances. It cost $24.95. Still substantial, but within reach for families buying on installment plans. The griddle became wedding gift standard, symbol of establishing a proper household. You're in a church basement in suburban Chicago, 1955, where the pancake supper has been reinvented for the Eisenhower era. No longer relief effort or simple fundraiser, it's now themed entertainment. Tonight is Hawaiian pancake luau with pineapple syrup and paper lays. The desperate creativity of Depression-era pancakes has become suburban whimsy. The proliferation of pancake variations in 1950s cookbooks reflects post-war abundance. Betty Crocker's picture cookbook from 1956 includes 17 pancake recipes. Blueberry pancakes, chocolate chip pancakes, silver dollar pancakes, each suggesting different occasions, moods, levels of domestic achievement. The simple pancake has become complicated. Children's birthday parties increasingly featured pancake breakfasts, a trend that pediatricians actually commented on in medical journals. Dr. Benjamin Spock's 1957 edition mentions pancakes as acceptable party food, but warns against excessive syrup. The medicalization of pancakes, like everything else in the 1950s, was underway. Television advertising for Aunt Jemima Mix, still using problematic imagery that wouldn't be seriously challenged for decades, reached 87 million viewers weekly by 1956. The company sponsored The Aunt Jemima Show, featuring pancake recipes and happy family segments. The commodification of pancake culture was complete, or so it seemed. You're observing a fascinating rebellion in 1957. Some suburban mothers, exhausted by performance pressure, are forming terrible cooks clubs. They meet monthly to deliberately make bad food, including intentionally awful pancakes. It's subversive humor masking genuine frustration. These women are questioning whether perfect pancakes equal perfect families. The rise of pancake restaurants specifically targeting families began in earnest. The original International House of Pancakes opened in 1958 in Los Angeles suburbs. Note the location, not downtown but suburbs, accessed by car, surrounded by parking. IHOP understood that pancakes were now suburban food, family food, Sunday drive destination food. Market research from the period, preserved in corporate archives, reveals how carefully pancake marketing targeted suburban anxieties. Advertisements emphasized time saved for family togetherness, ease that allowed mothers to be relaxed hostesses, consistency that prevented breakfast disappointments. Every promise addressed a fear. The chemical evolution of pancake mixes during the 1950s reads like science fiction. Emulsifiers for fluffiness, stabilizers for shelf life, artificial flavors for consistency. By 1958, a box of pancake mix contained 12 ingredients, only 3 of which home cooks would recognize. Progress had a chemical formula. You're at a PTA meeting in 1959 where mothers are debating whether to use mix or scratch batter for the school pancake breakfast. The discussion reveals deep anxieties about authenticity, tradition, and what they're teaching their children. One mother argues that using mix sends the wrong message about taking shortcuts. Another responds that modern women use modern methods. The gendering of pancake preparation was shifting. Suburban fathers cooking weekend pancakes became common enough that greeting card companies created Father's Day cards featuring pancake imagery. But this was carefully circumscribed liberation. Dad could cook pancakes on Sunday. Mom still handled every other meal. Regional variations persisted despite standardization pressure. Southern suburbs maintained allegiance to cornmeal pancakes. Jewish communities in Long Island suburbs served potato latkes alongside regular pancakes. Mexican-American families in Los Angeles suburbs added cinnamon and vanilla to standard mixes. Conformity had limits. The nutritional scrutiny of pancakes began in this decade. Home economists published studies about pancakes' food value, recommending whole wheat flour, warning against excessive syrup, suggesting fruit additions. The innocent pancake was being analyzed, optimized, problematized. Like everything in the 1950s, it was becoming complicated. By decade's end, the suburban pancake ritual was thoroughly established. Sunday morning meant Dad's pancakes or family trips to IHOP. Bisquick meant modernity. Perfect circles meant competent homemaking. The pancake had been recruited into selling the suburban dream. But cracks were showing. Some families found the performance exhausting. Some children would later recall these perfect pancake mornings as stifling rather than comforting. Some mothers resented the expectation that convenience products should create more elaborate presentations rather than actual rest. The 1950s had transformed pancakes from Depression survival food into suburban success symbol. From scarcity response to abundance celebration. from simple sustenance to complex social signifier. The pancake now carried the weight of American aspirations, the pressure of perfect family performance. Looking back from our contemporary perspective, the 1950s pancake phenomenon seems both innocent and fraught. All those perfect Sunday mornings, all those smiling families around breakfast tables, all those promises that the right mix could create the right life. The pancake had become mythology, and myths, as we know, are stories we tell ourselves about who we wish we were. You're sitting in a booth at the original International House of Pancakes in Toluca Lake, California. It's 1958, and the menu is a revelation. Not just pancakes, but 16 varieties. Swedish, German, French, Hawaiian, Georgia pecan, plus something called dollar pancakes that come in stacks of 10. This isn't breakfast. It's pancake theater, and Americans are buying tickets. IHOP's founders, Al and Jerry Lapin, along with Albert Callis, understood something that seems obvious now but was revolutionary then. Pancakes didn't have to be morning food. They could be dinner, late-night snacks, afternoon treats. The first IHOP stayed open until midnight, serving pancakes to teenagers after movies, families after church, anyone who wanted breakfast for dinner. The architecture itself was strategic. Those distinctive blue roofs, visible from highways, became landmarks. The Lapins had studied Howard Johnson's model, distinctive design that made every location feel familiar. By 1960, there were 50 IHOPs across the western United States, each one identical, each one promising the same reliable experience. But IHOP faced an unexpected competitor starting in 1972. McDonald's launched its breakfast menu nationally, and suddenly pancakes, or hotcakes as McDonald's branded them, were available at drive-thrus. The development of McDonald's breakfast actually began in 1970 when franchisee Jim Delagatti, the same man who invented the Big Mac, started serving donuts and sweet rolls. But Herb Peterson's invention of the Egg McMuffin in 1972 convinced corporate to go all in on breakfast. You're watching Peterson in his Santa Barbara McDonald's experimenting with pancake batter that could be pre-made, frozen, and reheated in under 90 seconds. The technical challenges were immense. Pancakes that could survive freezing without becoming rubbery, syrup packaging that wouldn't leak, serving containers that kept pancakes from steaming into mush. The numbers from this period are staggering. By 1977, McDonald's was serving 25 million pancake breakfasts annually. IHOP responded by extending hours to 24/7 in many locations. Denny's, founded in 1953 as a donut shop, pivoted to become a pancake competitor. The pancake wars were officially underway. Market research from 1975, archived in McDonald's corporate papers, reveals fascinating demographic insights. Working mothers were buying their children McDonald's pancake breakfasts before school. Single men were eating pancake dinners at IHOP. Night shift workers were having pancake lunches at 3 a.m. The temporal boundaries of pancake consumption had completely dissolved. The chemical engineering of fast food pancakes deserves scrutiny, if you can stomach it. McDonald's hotcakes contained 43 ingredients by 1978, including sodium aluminum phosphate, monocalcium phosphate, and partially hydrogenated soybean oil. These weren't your grandmother's pancakes. They were industrial products designed for consistency across 10,000 locations. You're in a Perkins restaurant in Minneapolis. 1979, where another model is emerging. Perkins, originally a single pancake house opened in 1958, has developed a hybrid approach. Table service like IHOP, but with bakery cases displaying pies, muffins, and mammoth cinnamon rolls. They're selling indulgence, positioning pancakes as part of a broader comfort food experience. The proliferation of pancake chains had unexpected cultural effects. Teenagers in the 1970s made late-night IHOP visits a ritual. The phrase, "let's go to IHOP," entered American vernacular as code for extended hanging out. Sociologists studying youth culture noted that 24-hour pancake restaurants had become third spaces, neither home nor school, where adolescent social life unfolded. Television advertising for pancake chains grew increasingly sophisticated. IHOP's 1976 Put a Smile on Your Plate campaign featured families of every configuration: single parents, grandparents with kids, multiracial groups. The message was clear: everyone was welcome at IHOP, anytime, any day. This inclusivity was revolutionary for its time, even if it was primarily motivated by profit. You're watching an interesting phenomenon in 1980, the rise of pancake challenges. Restaurants begin offering enormous stacks, 12, 15, 20 pancakes, free if you can finish them in under an hour. It's competitive eating before that became a sport. It's also deeply American, turning abundance into competition, breakfast into conquest. The economic impact of pancake chains on American breakfast culture was profound. According to industry analysis from 1981, pancake restaurants employed over 200,000 people, generated $2 billion in annual revenue, and influenced how Americans thought about breakfast timing, portion sizes, and meal categories. Regional chains were fighting back against national homogenization. The original Pancake House, founded in Portland in 1953, emphasized scratch cooking and premium ingredients. Their apple pancake, a German-inspired creation the size of a pizza, took 20 minutes to prepare. They were selling authenticity as antidote to fast food. The 24-hour availability of pancakes had philosophical implications that cultural critics of the era struggled to articulate. If you could have pancakes any time, were they still special? If every meal could be breakfast, what defined breakfast? The pancake was experiencing an existential crisis, wrapped in bacon and served with a side of hash browns. You're in a mall food court in 1982. where pancakes have been relegated to a warming tray at a cafeteria-style breakfast counter. This is perhaps peak pancake commercialization, fluorescent lit, mass-produced, available but not particularly appealing. The pancake has traveled far from those colonial hearths and church suppers. Labor issues and pancake chains revealed industry pressures. IHOP servers, according to union organizing documents from 1983, averaged $2.13 per hour plus tips, working split shifts that covered breakfast and late-night rushes. The cheerful pancake experience depended on underpaid workers managing drunk customers at 2 a.m., smiling through syrup-sticky tables and endless coffee refills. The nutritional reckoning was beginning. Health advocates in the early 1980s began calculating the caloric load of typical pancake meals. A full stack at IHOP with butter and syrup, over 1,000 calories. Add bacon and hash browns, you're approaching a full day's caloric needs in one meal. The innocent pancake was being reframed as dietary danger. Competition drove innovation in increasingly absurd directions. Pancakes stuffed with cheesecake filling. Birthday cake pancakes with frosting. Bacon pancakes with bacon inside and on top. Each chain trying to outindulge the others. The simple pancake was becoming unrecognizable, buried under toppings, fillings, and marketing gimmicks. By 1985, the commercialization seemed complete. You could get pancakes at any hour from dozens of chains. They came frozen in grocery stores, from dispensers at continental breakfasts, from drive-through windows. The pancake had achieved total market penetration, but something was being lost in this commercial triumph. The communal aspect of church pancake suppers. The ritual of Sunday morning family breakfast. The connection between making and eating. Pancakes were everywhere, but somehow meant less. Cultural observers began noting pancake fatigue by the mid-1980s. The very availability that chains had created was undermining pancakes' special status. Sunday morning pancakes at home were competing with identical pancakes available 24 hours a day. Why make them when you could buy them? Why buy them when they were nothing special? The pancake had been transformed from occasional treat to constant option, from community event to commercial transaction, from family tradition to franchise opportunity. The chains had succeeded in making pancakes universally available, but in doing so, had they stripped away everything that made pancakes meaningful? This commercialization would provoke a backlash, though that's getting ahead of our story. For now, in the mid-1980s, the pancake chains ruled Sunday mornings and every other time slot. The pancake had been conquered by capitalism, branded, franchised, and served with a smile and a side of market research. You're scrolling through Instagram on a Sunday morning in 2024, and your feed is flooded with pancake photos. Towering stacks drizzled with artisanal maple butter. Japanese souffle pancakes that jiggle when poked. Dutch babies photographed from above in cast iron skillets. Rainbow pancakes, charcoal pancakes, pancakes that somehow contain entire slices of pie. This isn't breakfast, it's content creation, and the pancake has become perhaps the most photogenic food in America. The artisanal pancake movement began quietly in the early 2000s, though food historians are still debating exact origins. Small cafes in Portland, Brooklyn, and San Francisco started treating pancakes like craft cocktails, sourcing heritage grains, grinding flour fresh daily, culturing their own buttermilk. Clinton Saint Baking Company in New York opened in 2001, became famous for blueberry pancakes with a 2-hour wait. People actually waited. But the real transformation came with social media. Instagram launched in 2010, and suddenly every meal became a potential photograph. Pancakes, with their stackable architecture and syrup-drizzled drama, were perfectly designed for the platform. Food bloggers discovered that pancake posts got 3 times the engagement of other breakfast foods, according to social media analytics firms that track such things. The pandemic of 2020 created an unexpected pancake renaissance. With restaurants closed and families trapped at home, Sunday pancakes became one of the few remaining rituals. Google searches for pancake recipe increased 500% in March 2020. Flour shortages followed as Americans rediscovered cooking. The panic buying of yeast for bread making is well documented. Less discussed is the parallel run on baking powder. You're watching a TikTok video from 2021. A teenager making pancakes from a recipe passed down from her great-grandmother. The same Depression-era water pancakes we encountered earlier. She's added her own twist, activated charcoal for color, aquafaba instead of eggs for her vegan followers. But the base recipe is recognizable. The past and present colliding in 60-second segments. The sourdough movement intersected with pancake culture in fascinating ways. Home fermentation, which exploded during lockdowns, led to sourdough pancake recipes trending across food blogs. These weren't quick Sunday morning foods. They required feeding starters, overnight fermentation, careful timing. The slow food movement had finally reached the pancake, a food originally valued for its speed. Contemporary pancake houses split into 2 distinct categories. Fast casual chains like Snooze and the Flying Biscuit offer elevated comfort food with organic ingredients and creative toppings. Meanwhile, ultra-traditional diners double down on nostalgia, promising pancakes like Grandma made, even though Grandma probably used Bisquick. The economic data from 2023 tells interesting stories. Despite inflation pushing restaurant meals beyond many budgets, pancake-focused restaurants showed growth. Industry analysts suggest, though interpretations vary, that pancakes represent affordable indulgence. A $15 stack of specialty pancakes feels like a treat compared to a $25 burger. You're at a farmer's market in 2024, where a vendor is selling pancake kits for $18. They contain heirloom wheat flour, local maple syrup, farm eggs, and cultured buttermilk powder. The same ingredients that colonial families scraped together from necessity are now luxury items. The wheel hasn't just turned, it's been artisanally restored and marked up 400%. Food scientists studying contemporary pancake trends note something paradoxical. Even as ingredients become more sophisticated, the actual cooking method remains essentially unchanged. We still pour batter on hot surfaces and flip when bubbles form. The technology that seemed poised to revolutionize pancakes in the 1950s never materialized. There's no app for flipping pancakes yet. The globalization of American pancake culture is remarkable. American-style breakfast restaurants have opened in Tokyo, Paris, Dubai. Meanwhile, international pancake variations are entering American consciousness. Korean hotteok, Ethiopian injera, French saka. The pancake is becoming simultaneously more American and more international. You're watching a live stream of a competitive pancake eating contest. Yes, this exists now. The record stands at 113 silver dollar pancakes in 8 minutes, set in 2016 and still unbroken. But more interesting than the competition is the audience. Thousands watching someone eat pancakes as entertainment. The pancake has transcended food to become performance. Environmental concerns are reshaping pancake culture in unexpected ways. Restaurants tout carbon-neutral pancakes made with regenerative agriculture flour. Plant-based alternatives to eggs and milk have advanced enough that vegan pancakes are indistinguishable from traditional ones, according to blind taste tests that probably matter more to marketers than consumers. The Sunday pancake dad has evolved into a cultural archetype, complete with specialized equipment and techniques learned from YouTube. These fathers, and increasingly mothers and non-binary parents, approach pancake making with the intensity of craft brewers. They have favorite spatulas, opinions about griddle temperatures, theories about resting batter. Mental health professionals have begun noting, though research is preliminary, the therapeutic value of pancake making rituals. The repetitive action of pouring and flipping, the immediate gratification of creation, the sensory engagement of cooking. Some therapists actually recommend Sunday pancake making as a mindfulness practice, though insurance doesn't cover maple syrup. You're at a food truck festival where pancake tacos are being served, pancakes folded around scrambled eggs and bacon. It's simultaneously innovative and ancient, the same combination colonial families ate, just restructured for Instagram. Every pancake innovation seems to circle back to those original ingredients: flour, eggs, milk, heat, hope. The current state of pancake mix reveals our contradictions. Sales of premium, organic, ancient grain mixes are growing. So are sales of just add water convenience mixes. Americans want both authenticity and ease, tradition and innovation, health consciousness and indulgence. The pancake aisle at Whole Foods contains 40 varieties, each promising to solve a different modern anxiety. Dating apps report that mentioning pancakes in profiles increases matches by 15%. Apparently, Sunday pancakes suggest domestic stability and emotional availability. The pancake has become a personality trait, a signal of wholesomeness in an increasingly complex world. Food writers debate whether we're experiencing peak pancake. The variety has never been greater, the availability never more constant, the cultural weight never heavier. Yet, something feels unsustainable about pancakes that cost $30, require tower weights, or contain gold leaf. The pendulum seems ready to swing back, though toward what remains unclear. Looking at contemporary pancake culture, you see all of American history reflected in miniature. The colonial merging of cultures, the religious imposition of schedule, the frontier necessity and innovation, the industrial standardization, the suburban myth-making, the commercial conquest, and now the artisanal reclamation. Each era thought it had perfected the pancake. Each era was wrong. What remains consistent across all these transformations is the Sunday morning moment. That first bite when maple syrup meets butter meets warm pancake. Whether it's 1650 or 2024, whether the pancakes are made from necessity or luxury, whether eaten in a colonial kitchen or posted on social media, that moment remains remarkably unchanged. The pancake's journey from European import to American icon wasn't planned or orchestrated. It happened one Sunday at a time, one family at a time, one breakfast at a time. The tradition wasn't imposed, it evolved. It wasn't designed, it emerged. And perhaps that's why it endures, even as everything else about American life transforms beyond recognition. Because in the end, pancakes aren't really about pancakes. They're about Sunday mornings and family gatherings, about community and continuity, about the human need to transform simple ingredients into something more than food. They're about the stories we tell ourselves, the traditions we maintain, the moments we share. And tomorrow morning, or next Sunday, or whenever you next smell pancakes cooking, you'll be participating in a tradition that stretches back 400 years and forward into an uncertain, but probably pancake-filled future. The stack on your plate will carry the weight of history, the promise of community, the simple pleasure of butter melting into warm circles of possibility. The American Sunday pancake tradition wasn't born. It was assembled slowly, imperfectly, collectively. It wasn't designed, it evolved. And it continues evolving. One breakfast, one family, one perfectly imperfect Sunday morning at a time. Time slows down as the syrup pours. Everything else can wait. For now, there are just pancakes and Sunday, and the continuation of something that started before any of us were born and will likely continue after we're gone. The pancake abides. The tradition continues. The Sunday morning ritual rolls on. And here we are at the end of our journey through 4 centuries of Sunday mornings. The griddles have cooled. The last drop of syrup has been poured, and the story of how pancakes became America's Sunday tradition is settling into your mind like flour settling in a sifter, soft and gradual. You've traveled from colonial hearths to Instagram feeds, from Puritan Sabbaths to 24-hour IHOPs, from indigenous maple groves to suburban kitchens. And through it all, the simple act of mixing batter, heating a griddle, and flipping a cake has remained remarkably constant, remarkably human. As your breathing slows, as your thoughts begin to soften around the edges, you might notice how the pancake tradition mirrors the rhythm of rest itself. The Saturday night preparation, the Sunday morning ritual, the gentle sizzle that says slow down, take time, be present. Even in our accelerated age, pancakes refuse to be rushed. They bubble when they're ready to flip, not before, not after. Close your eyes for a moment, and you can almost smell them, that particular combination of warm batter and melting butter, sweet syrup and morning coffee. It's the smell of Sunday, of family, of continuity. A smell your great-grandparents would recognize, that your great-grandchildren will probably know. Let your muscles relax, starting with your shoulders, letting them drop. The weight of the day dissolving like sugar in warm maple syrup. Your breath deepening, lengthening, matching the slow pour of batter onto a patient griddle. There's no rush here, no urgency, just the gentle progression from ingredients to breakfast, from evening to rest. You might dream tonight of colonial kitchens, of church basements filled with neighbors, of diners glowing neon in the darkness. All these moments layered like pancakes themselves, each one distinct yet part of the stack, each one contributing to the height and substance of tradition. Your mind is quieting now, the day's concerns fading like steam from a hot griddle. Tomorrow's worries can wait, like batter resting overnight. For now, there's just this moment, this story, this gentle drift toward dreams. Think of all those Sunday mornings, stretching back through time, millions of families gathered around millions of tables. Each breakfast a small ritual, a tiny tradition, a momentary pause in the rush of living. Together they form an unbroken chain, linking colonial hearths to modern kitchens, connecting us all. Let yourself sink deeper into rest, like settling into a familiar booth at a favorite diner. Everything here is known, safe, predictable in the best way. The pancakes arrive as expected, golden, warm, welcoming. Your breathing is deep and even now, like the rhythm of pouring and flipping, pouring and flipping. The ancient rhythm of making breakfast, of making meaning. Let it carry you, like the smell of pancakes carries through a house, drawing everyone together. Rest now, wrapped in the warmth of this very American story. This tale of transformation and tradition, of how something as simple as pancakes became something as significant as Sunday morning ritual. Let it settle over you like a favorite blanket, comfortable, familiar, exactly what you need. The griddle is cooling, the kitchen is quiet, the story is told, and you're drifting now, drifting into dreams that taste faintly of maple syrup, that sound like distant church bells, that feel like Sunday morning, peaceful, timeless, and gently, gently pulling you towards sleep.